this AI model that can do extraordinarily good coding to the point that it can do coding, right? That's the scary thing. And even the person that wrote Claude Code that does all this for you used his own model to be able to go off and build Claude Code. It's a scary thing that it's reinventing itself and building its own tools. 4.6 has now come along, and it's the bigger context window. It's got multiple agent support. The fact that it's now not just going, okay, this is my task list, I'm going to go off and do it. No, it's an agent and an agent and an agent that are all going to talk to each other to be able to go off and complete the task, which means that a 9-month project that would normally take a team of people can be done in 7 hours.
Behind every Microsoft partner is a story of growth, a story of ambition, and a story of people pushing themselves, their businesses, and technology further. Every week here on Microsoft Mentors, the podcast, I speak to business, technology, and thought leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem, offering mentorship at scale to the Microsoft partner community. So let's dive into this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Today we are rejoined by Alex Pearce. How you doing, Alex?
I am great, and thank you so much for having me back. It's great to see the success that you built on this over the last kind of 2 years. It was an honor to be one of your first guests, and it's an honor to be able to come back. So thank you very much for having me.
No, the honor is all ours, and yeah, you can add an extra line to the honors list, which is first ever returning guest. So
I didn't realize I was actually the first one. So thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, and so for anyone that maybe did or didn't listen to the last episode, but just to remind them, Alex, just give them people a bit of context in terms of who you are, what you do, what you're up to, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Alex Pearce. I work for Softcat, the largest IT reseller in the UK. I work in our advisory team. I am our chief strategist for Microsoft. I love this line that I say to customers: I don't have to drink the Microsoft Kool-Aid. I will tell you the honest truth. And customers really appreciate that as a true kind of value add, that because I understand a bit more of their outcome, that I'm giving them a bit more an honest answer. And that's kind of what I like to do on my social media and putting articles out, is giving a bit more of a true lay of the land. What does this look like? Some of that art of the possibility. And I'm lucky enough that I've been a Microsoft MVP now for 18 years. I've been a Copilot MVP now. Since they actually released the ability for you to be a Copilot MVP. So I was one of the first 6 in the UK. And I think there's about 12 of us, 15 of us now in the UK, and about 100, 200 of us worldwide. So a real honor to be able to really be pushing that AI frontier as we hear Microsoft talking about it.
Yeah. And it must be MVP Summit must be coming up fairly soon, is it?
Yeah, it's next month. It's coming around quick. I'm not reminding my partner that I'm flying off to America for a week. I'm letting her realise that in her own terms. She won't be pleased that I've said that. But yes, I'll be over to MVP Summit. Won't be able to tell you any of that information, but it certainly gives me that strategic insight to be able to say, let's go in this direction. Can't tell you why, but you'll understand in a couple of things. And that's one of the many benefits I get from being an MVP.
Yeah. Well, I'm slowly dropping hints around maybe not being in the UK towards the end of November to my wife because I want to try and get out to Ignite. But two young kids at home, it's going to be a tough sell, but I'll keep trying.
I've got exactly that. I'm off to America. I get back on the following Friday. My partner with 2 of our 3 kids is flying off to Australia for 2.5 weeks. Wow. So if she wants to go to Australia and I don't see the kids and I have to go to America, that's fine. We can cope with that.
Yeah. So a lot's changed since we last spoke. A lot of innovation, a lot of exciting changes in the technology landscape. I think when we spoke, which was August 2024, Softcat themselves were in the middle of rolling Copilot out internally, sort of customer zero type journey. Fast forward to where we're at now, and there's been a lot of change. So I guess just at a very high level view, Alex, what does the landscape look like now in the Copilot world for Microsoft, both from a partner perspective and from an end user customer looking to consume and use it?
Yeah, I think they come similar messaging. Let's go through what Microsoft have changed during that time. when the $30 per user per month Copilot license first came out, you got Office Copilot, the things that you can do in the native applications that you use on a day-to-day basis, summarizing a Word document, helping you a little bit inside of Excel, or it was actually still in preview for Excel for many months before it actually came out, PowerPoint, Teams, all that kind of side of things. And then we started to see a few applications that are built to be more AI native, things like notebooks. As I like to say, it's a complete rip-off of Google Notebook LM, maybe not quite there from the feature parity at this moment in time. If you've ever played with Google Notebook LM, do recommend it. I guess it was probably about 15 months ago, we saw Microsoft add Copilot Studio to that $30 user license.
Yeah.
That's the biggest return on investment, the ability to be able to build agents. So from a Softcat point of view, we've kind of gone on that journey. We've gone on that journey of where it was just Office, and then we've gone into this agentic piece. And now the agentic platforms conversation is becoming even bigger. And as you kind of mentioned to me when we've chatted privately, is that MCPs are becoming a bigger thing. And I know we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But this whole agentic piece is an opportunity for any company, including Softcat, to start looking at agents. How can we talk to data? How can we bring workflow or automation into these agentic side of things? So when we go and speak to our customers, we talk about it in a 4 pillars kind of way. AI in Office, native AI applications like the notebook that I mentioned, data and extensibility, because it's great that you can go off and you can talk to your data, but it's not talk to all your data. It's just your mailbox, your SharePoint files, and your OneDrive. What if I really want to know everything about Alex Pearce? How do I start to bring in these other bits? And that's why extensibility is in there. And then you've got the agentic platforms. There is multiple that Microsoft are offering: Agent Builder, Copilot Studio, and as it's now been renamed, Microsoft Foundry, previously AI Foundry or AI Studio before that. It's had a few names. I think we've probably settled on Microsoft Foundry now. So that's a lot that's gone on, including the hundreds of updates that have come to each of those 4 pillars and governance. We've got Agent 365 coming in the future, Microsoft IQ with Work IQ, Foundry IQ, Fabric IQ. And as my latest presentation is entitled, Copilot's Getting Complicated, but for the good. And that's kind of where we go, because it is.
So there's obviously, like you say, an explosion of opportunity there for organizations, going from it being very much grounded in the M365 app space to all of these options now. If you're a non-technical stakeholder in a business, you know, you're the CEO of a 500, 600 person company, you know that AI agents, these technologies exist and there's opportunity for you as a business owner to implement them. How do you even start to look at what options are right for you as a business, rather than going, do we need all of it? Do we need one of it? How does that conversation normally play out?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a common one because I do get invited to board meetings to come and explain kind of not that office bit and explaining that you can just ask it to summarize a document with a good prompt and that kind of side of things. It is more into that agentic space. The agentic space is actually returning more on that $30 per user per month than any other tool. So starting off with a really simple agent. What is an agent? Explaining it. You know what? This is taking the AI language model that we've got. We're asking it to be able to be somebody, so it's got some context. So asking it to behave in a particular way. So we give it certain information. Speak to me in English. Always say thank you for your help at the end of each message. You are a HR advisor, and that's the one that I start with. You're a HR advisor, and then we give it some knowledge. And the knowledge is where we can link it to a SharePoint site, an external website, a SQL database, all sorts of different tools that are now available for us to be able to pull data in as part of that. The simplest one that I like to explain is a HR agent. You said it acts as a HR advisor, and the knowledge is all the policies. And the number of people that we've seen with their calls that go into the help desk for HR to ask questions is dramatically reduced just because there's now an agent to be able to say, can you tell me what my pat leave entitlement is? What do I get from a mat leave? What's the policy around this, this, and this? And so the HR kind of people that work within that team are finding that they can do more of that critical thinking rather than necessarily read this policy, or it says in this policy, actually an agent's going off and doing that. So I like to define that as a real simple knowledge agent that you can do stuff. You can have it go off and complete tasks. Let's just say you wanted to log every single one just in a database. You've got a CRM, you've got a cool logging system. You want to understand what people are asking. You can run a task using Power Automate to go and log that inside of whatever solution you want. And then you've got autonomous agents. If you're really brave, you potentially could go off and you could have it so it automatically replies to all your emails. Trigger, the new email comes in. Here's the context of what I want you to be able to reply to this email, or all my emails. Go off and reply and automatically send it. I like to remind people it's Copilot, not autopilot at this point. Then you've kind of got this advanced elements of agent-to-agent conversations. This ability to have conversation and have the agents go off and kind of talk to each other to be able to go off and complete a task. And the example I love to use here is actually from a school setting, because I think more people can relate to it. If you imagine a teacher, she creates some digital resources and she uploads it to their virtual learning environments. There's ones built into Teams called assignments. You see that inside of education things, tenants. So they upload it, and it goes off to the 30 kids. Well, how about if they uploaded it to an agent? So let's say it's the upload agent that they send it to. That agent then goes and talks to the management information system, the MIS, things like Arbor, SIMS, if you've heard of those. That's what we've kind of got here in the UK. And it goes off and it looks up that class and it looks up the 30 kids and it understands the individual learning needs for each of those students. So it's trained to pull out that. Then it sends it over to the PowerPoint agent, because Microsoft are giving us some pre-built agents. So we've got the PowerPoint agent, and it creates 30 different PowerPoint presentations based on the individual learning needs or special educational needs that are for each of those. We know they need to be in purple. We know that little Johnny engages more when it's in themed by Aston Villa or unicorns or whatever it may well be. And then they are going off and assigned inside the same VLE. So to the teacher, it's the same. It's uploading it once. But with this agentic process, we can start to query information. We can start to bring the context and understanding that a large language model can have to then provide individualized learning to those students. And I think that's really powerful. And if you start thinking about how you could start to do that with your own systems within work, how can you go off and pull from your CRM, analyze information, do deep research on things? You start to build out these processes that have AI built into them. So workflow in the AI within the workflow, but also agentic systems going off, pulling information to be able to support in the output that you want.
Yeah. And I think in the business work setting, a comparable example to what you just gave there on the education side of things would be like something like sales proposals or sales documentation, right? Whereas historically, businesses have had either one static sales doc that they send out to all of their customers, or if they want to do something bespoke for a particular customer, they've got to get time for marketing, they've got to get sign off, etc., etc. Whereas it sounds like with a model like that, you could have your base template of your sales proposition, service proposition, whatever it is, and then it goes into the agent and it goes, right, define this for Tesco, define this if we're going to send it to HSBC, define it if we're going to send it to Softcat. So it's those, I guess it's allowing hyper personalization at scale with the same amount of work needed as the input, right?
Absolutely. And when Microsoft first announced these autonomous agents, it was done by Satya at the Microsoft AI Tour in London, October 2024. He stood up and talked to them, and they showed an example from McKinsey, a big, largest consultancy firm in America. And that was very similar to what you've just described. An email's come in from a customer. I want to be able to do and harden my cybersecurity. It goes off and looks at the agent to understand what they've already got according to the records that we've got within the CRM solution. It then goes off to see and pulls that information. Let's just say it's the Microsoft stack, but they haven't bought E5. Then it goes off and looks, is the Cisco the right one? Is Sophos the right one? Is Microsoft E5 the right one? It goes off to another platform to then understand quotes, maybe doing deep research into the industry they're in, what other people are doing and building trends, and then passing it on to be able to stick it into a Word document and sending it to the account manager before it's sent off to make sure that they're happy, because there's still going to be some kind of accountability in some places. So it's really interesting to see just kind of those processes you're saying that this can be done in minutes of the email coming in. That's really powerful.
But it's massively reliant on the context that's been provided to it, right? So if you're a business that has got a really messy, unmanaged CRM, or you've got, really disparate data sets, it's difficult to get. AI doesn't fix having that messy back end, does it? You've got to have the context to provide it with so that it can deliver the solution that it needs to.
Absolutely, context is so important, and the reason is that the more context you can give, the better the output. That's almost exactly what you're saying there. But it's the same for agents. Effectively, you're saying here's an instruction, and this is the description of what you want you to go off and do. The more details you put in there, the more output you're going to get. If you're more specific, you can go off and do things. I've been playing with coding with AI. I've got a 6,500 word starter prompt now of how I expect it to understand Docker and database design and the APIs and all that kind of side of things. That context is so important for the AI to be able to follow it. And that's why even in the last week, we've seen a lot of coming out from Claude around Opus 4.6 and the models that it can go off and it can deliver. They're incredibly powerful because there's got a 1 million token context window, which means that it can go off and it can do multiple agents at the same time. And it can go off and it can run for almost 7, 8, 9 hours without stopping because it's got all that context in there to be able to go off and make those changes. That's some of the really advanced stuff that's coming down. We're not going to see that necessarily in the Microsoft platform just yet within the products that we get, but it shows that the more context you get, the right context, the better the outputs.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it right at the start, and anyone that's living or working within the Microsoft bubble will have started to see this term frontier getting pushed out in all different types of marketing. So from the Microsoft perspective, what the hell do they mean by frontier?
Yeah, I need to give you two definitions because there's two very clear different ones. There's I guess one of them is more of a business transformation with AI. That's how I like to kind of differentiate to be able to say this is what frontier means. We've already heard this frontier term used from some of these large scale OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, and these frontier models, the latest, the most advanced models that they've got. So Microsoft are now taking that to be able to take that even further. And it's about doing transformation. It's about thinking of your organization to be able to turn around and go, how can we use AI in a better way? And Microsoft kind of break it down into 3 or 4 areas. What can we do with our staff? What can we do with customers? What can we do with back-end stuff? And how is it going to bend the curve of innovation within our organization for us to be able to do more, to sell more, to save more, whatever it may well be? And it probably comes more to agents that are going to go off and do that rather than just summarizing an email. Yes, it saves a bit of time, gives you a bit of insight. But that's why I keep saying, okay, frontier firm, it's going to save you money. You've got to look at the agentic side of things. You've got to look at things like Microsoft Foundry. You've got to look at standard technologies that kind of sit across that. I said there was 2 definitions. The second definition is kind of in the product itself. Microsoft used to do beta, then they called it preview. It's now called frontier. And it does mean that things can change. So if you see that there's a particular agent, you can see it on there, you can start to use it. All of a sudden you find that, hang on a minute, that says frontier. What does that mean? It might run in the US data center. It may not be compliant. It may well have features changed before it goes generally available. And when that frontier disappears, that's when it's gone generally available. So yes, we've got this frontier transformation side of things, but from a product inside of there, you've also got this beta, which also means it might be chargeable. So let's just be careful around that term. Think of frontier, how can I do transformation? And then evaluate those new tools that are kind of coming through.
Yeah. And I guess, it's one of those where when any product is being built and pushed towards general availability, that iteration is so important to get it out so that people can use it in, the beta type world. So frontier is basically coming into that product life cycle as a term to say this is at the frontier. We're playing with it, we're refining it. You can start using it, but it's not in GA yet, so it's not fully ready.
Absolutely. That's why I just say it's beta. Just see it as a beta. We don't know what it is, and a really good example of that at the moment is Agent 365. It's in Frontier mode. You can only see it if you've got Frontier enabled in your tenancy. Then you can see it, but we don't know if Microsoft are going to charge for it or not yet. So we've got to wait sometimes before we truly start adopting things, certainly when they're in this Frontier mode.
Yeah. And we obviously caught up last week after you posted out an article around sort of the nine core Microsoft MCP servers, Microsoft native MCP servers. So if we start sort of with the overall context and sort of theory behind it, what is an MCP? What is MCP by definition, and why is it used?
Yeah, absolutely. So MCP, Model Context Protocol, as it stands for, is something that's come out from Anthropics. And they said, we're going to build this Model Context Protocol, and it's a way for AI to be able to interpret data from an external source in a better way. In some of my newsletter articles, and people are welcome to follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll get an invite to my newsletter. One of the things I put about 12 months ago was about open API. So APIs, but this standard around Open API. And if you think back to Active Directory and you think about the properties that you get within it, and you get user principal name, and you get SAM account name, which is kind of the NetBIOS name. If I just passed SAM account name to a small language model that maybe didn't have the understanding of what SAM account name was, it's going to go, well, what's that? I don't understand what it is. So open API standards help you to be able to understand a little bit more what those properties are. Because I could say username is actually some account name. I think it's username. I understand that. An AI model can go up and can inherit that a little bit more within it. So, but taking that one step further, that's where MCPs kind of come in. This ability to be able to have these things processed and understood almost as we think about it, we use it as natural language processing. It actually understands that element to be able to pull this data through. And I've got one on GitHub as an example that talks to the Microsoft roadmap. There's an RSS feed. All I've done is I've asked it, so you can go off and you can say, instead of it querying the API and trying to figure out how it does the API, the MCP goes off. Okay, I can pull the last 10 updates because that's one of the calls. And another way that I like to describe this sometimes, it's like a PowerShell module. You bring your PowerShell module in, you can do gets, you can do sends, you can do filters, and the AI language model goes off and does that for you rather than you having to worry about the API calls to do it. So that's the start of the story. Anthropics came out and they said they're going to do it. And then Microsoft said, that's a really good idea. We're going to adopt that as well. So over the last kind of 12 months, and that only came out about October 24th, similar time as when Copilot Studio kind of started to come out and the autonomous agent side of things. So we've seen this element of Microsoft going, we're going to go off and do it. What I wasn't expecting is to see how deep Microsoft have gone into this. And this now seems to be becoming the integration technique for your data endpoints into a lot of their applications. We're seeing things that Microsoft have built by default as part of Microsoft 365 Copilot licenses, and there's 9 of those, and we'll go into those in a minute. You go into Copilot Studio. I mentioned there's different ways of bringing your data in a bunch of tools. APIs is one of those. MCPs is now one of those. And then we can start to build them. So hang on a minute, I could build an agent that pulls through the Microsoft roadmap and I can talk to it. And actually I can use that MCP with multiple different agents that I might want to build. So actually we're building a single data integration to multiple agents. And because MCP is also going forward with OpenAI, with Gemini, with Google and their Google Studio, it's now become a kind of a foundational tool cross-platform that people are going to use. Yeah. So when I'm speaking to businesses, both small, large enterprise organizations, I want to be recommending something to them that says, hang on a minute, go off and use something that's foundational for all of AI. And this is kind of the first one that's really done this. So that's why I'm quite passionate about those MCPs. Microsoft are building them. We're seeing them more. I recently joined the Azure AI Studio Discord server. There's all sorts of stuff in there about building MCPs because Microsoft are recognizing this is a way you've been able to integrate and pull your data. And with Microsoft 365 Copilot, they've got 9 of them. As you kind of alluded to, things like Outlook Calendar. That's one of them. Speaking to the whole of your graph data. There's just the general search one, like you see with the work switch when you want to talk to all your data side of things. So imagine having one that looks at your calendar and also looks at the roadmap and automatically puts in when the announcements were put into a calendar, because it's got those two forms of data being pulled into an agent. And you just ask the agent to automatically run every single time you trigger, every time a bit of data is added to the roadmap, and it adds it to your calendar out when it's going to be added. It's probably a poor scenario, but there's lots of different ways that you can start to see that this level of integration kind of comes in.
Yeah. And like you say, I think it's definitely interesting that it sounds like that MCP theory and model is, like you say, cross-platform. So if you're as a business and at this point in time you're investing heavily in AI through the Microsoft lens because you've got Microsoft licenses and Copilot, etc., I guess building a knowledge base within the technology teams around what MCPs are and how they work and how they integrate and how they interact with data and with agents and large language models. But fast forward, 6, 9, 10 months down the line, they have a use case to use something like you say with Claude or with one of the Anthropic tools, whatever it might be. And they've already built that, I guess, foundational knowledge that will then transfer and work in different large language models, which is, I think, useful because, and especially having lived and breathed in the Microsoft world for so long, historically Microsoft was quite closed shop, wasn't it? It was like, we're going to build natively, it's going to work for Microsoft and Microsoft only, we don't want to play in the party with everyone else. I think cloud started to break down those barriers, and I think now that we're in this AI technology curve, those barriers are just totally broken down. There has to be cross collaboration, cross integration between all the big players, because ultimately different vendors, different organizations in the AI space are going to win in different spaces, I think. There's not going to be a one size fits all where everyone only uses Microsoft AI or everyone only just uses Google. Everyone is going to be using cross platform, aren't they?
Cross-platform, multiple platforms, different for different departments, or using particular just AI models, because let's just say in marketing, you might want to be able to go off and use something within Gemini because we've got the Nano Banana creating new images side of things, but you still want to use Copilot for meeting transcriptions to be able to gather requirements for what you need to be able to go off and build for your next go-to-market, as an example. There's going to be the right model for the right choice for the right people. Another thing that I often say around those side of things. What's also really interesting is, as I said, Anthropic came out to say that they were doing this MCP thing. Microsoft announced they were going to do a lot more with Claude back in November time, and in the same month, the Linux Foundation accepted the MCP protocol, the actual way that we do this. And so actually it's not owned by Anthropic now, or it's not owned by Microsoft, it's owned by the Linux Foundation, a open community that are going to go off and make sure that this is looked after rather than it being one of the big players. So it feels more open source now. And I think that's, again, a really positive thing with this kind of acceleration that we're seeing in AI at the moment.
Yeah. And on that sort of cross-platform, multi-platform sort of point, because I think one of the big risks for businesses, organizations, institutions, whatever they are, public or private sector, is that the business going down one particular roadmap route with AI, and then in the background, shadow AI being brought in by individual users, individual teams that aren't necessarily integrated into wider systems. They're just going and getting their own licenses to do X, Y, and Z because they've seen a good use case for it on LinkedIn or whatever. So how do businesses of different sizes and scales manage that, from having a clear roadmap that's delivering AI for as many use cases as possible, whilst maintaining the ability to get the return on investment and protect themselves from, Bobby over in design going and spending a load of money on Adobe's AI system or whatever it might be?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, there's the big players. People want Gemini, they want OpenAI, they want Claude, and then there's Copilot. And the benefit that Microsoft have got above all of these is that compliance state. We will run it in a compliant data center under the same trust agreements that you've got with us, and where you're housing your emails and your files, or your CRM and your Azure and all that kind of side of things. And we are committed to that. Which you can't necessarily get that with Claude. Claude is not GDPR compliant at this moment in time as an individual product. It's running a few things in Copilot now, but it still comes to the same commitment from Microsoft. can we start to see that these big frontier firms doing these AI models started to compete with that compliance levels that are needed by organizations, especially when they're heavily relegated organizations, financial institutions, ones that work with country defense and military and all that kind of side of things. We're not seeing that necessarily, not certainly outside the US, that supports that level of compliance. And that's why Microsoft has still got that sweet point. Got a really good price compared to what some of the features and the levels that you get with OpenAI and Claude and how much you pay there. $30 is really good price per month. And all of a sudden you're going, okay, I'm also getting that compliance. I'm getting the fact that I can go off and I can go to our compliance center that everybody's already trained on, that I can go off and pull out the prompts and the inputs that we'll put on there if I get a SARS request. So if I go in and I say to an organization, can you tell me everything that you know about me as Alex Pearce, they've got to be able to pull it out all their systems. Do the other AI tools do that at this moment in time? So when we start looking at the compliance levels that are required for us to be able to do these things, that's when the big models and they start to have a little bit of difficulty against the Copilot world.
Yeah. And so out of the sort of the 9 native MCPs that Microsoft have worked on and that you've looked at, which of those do you think is, the most impactful, the most interesting, the one that you think actually, if I was going to pick just one of these to work with and use in my business, this is what it would be?
Yeah, it's a good question, really, because I think all 9 of them are quite useful, and maybe we'll stick a link into the article which describes the 9 of them that are there. But one of the things that I sometimes find challenging with Copilot is the fact that when I click onto that work tab and I go off and I start typing a message, it doesn't necessarily always go and find what it is. I feel like I need to refine my prompt or need to refine things a little bit further. One of those MCPs is the search that it uses to go off and find the data within it. So if I can build an agent that actually does sit on top of all my work elements, and I can train it to do the outputs that I want it to be, rather than what Microsoft defined as everybody, that's going to be really powerful for my productivity. I can bring that agent into Word. I can bring that agent into PowerPoint. I can start using it based on all of my data, wherever I am with that Copilot, because those agents sit within all those products. You can pull them up. That's really powerful for me. I'm controlling how my data works with me in my agent, rather than Microsoft telling me how it's going to go on and work. So playing with that and seeing the kind of output that supports you is really going to support you. And this is probably not something that everybody's going to do. It's probably going to be a bit more of an advanced thing, but there are going to be more people that become more and more advanced in the AI space over the years, especially with younger generations now across the world, where AI is becoming a bit more as part of that foundational curriculum. It's been announced in the last 2 days in the UK that it's the science GCSE and kind of work that you get there is going to have more AI focus within it, and the curriculum for that's going to be rebuilt. So we've got to start making sure that they that the right training is there and understanding, and the right platforms for them to be able to come and do that work as well.
Yeah. It's interesting, and obviously your background is heavily in education tech, right? Which we covered in the last podcast, and my wife is a teacher, and it's so interesting to see, or will be so interesting to see what the world looks like when people that are in the education system now end up in the workforce, because we've seen the rate of change over the last 18, 24 months. If you roll that out over the next 3 to 5 years, what does that curve look like is going to be the interesting one. And I think to make sure that the future generations coming into the workforce have got foundational knowledge of AI before they enter the workforce is going to be massively important, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to be honest with something. I was invited by the head teacher for my daughter's school to come and do an assembly this week. My daughter didn't know I was coming to do it. It's a really big surprise for them. And I asked her I wanted to get them up and I wanted to get them loud. I know that sometimes the teachers like them quiet in assembly. I thought, no, I'm not doing that. I thought, right, who's got a laptop at home? Who's got a tablet? Who's got a phone? I was surprised by the number of kids that have actually got phones that they have not just access from the tablets and the internet, all that kind of side of things. Then I asked the question, how many people have heard of ChatGPT? And I thought it was going to be fairly quiet, because these are 7 to 11-year-olds. I would say 70-80% of their hands went up. I was like, blinking heck, these are 7 to 11-year-olds knowing about ChatGPT, and who's heard of Copilot, and they've heard of it because they see it around and they hear about it. It's on the news, it's on the Premier League app, all that kind of side of things. And it's the same thing. And it's like, wow, they actually know this stuff. They can go off and do it. And I actually loved I did a bit of a is it real or is it fake kind of thing, and got an AI video, somebody singing 6-7, and they loved that, as you could probably imagine. And it's a Catholic school, and I found a picture online of the Pope drawing on a Lamborghini. So I thought, well, did I create a prompt that says create a Lamborghini with the Pope writing on it, where the color scheme of what the Pope is wearing is the same as the color of the car, with people watching over? And half went for fake, half went for real. But they got it. They understood it. And that's really amazing that at that age, they understand it. What are they going to be like when they hit the workplace in 5, 7, 10 years' time? And where's AI going to be? So we've got to give them the foundational understanding on, say, for Internet Day as it was, to go off and start understanding what AI is, how it can help them. And this is going to be one of the things, if we're going to see more of this trend of agents completing work, all that kind of thing, critical thinking becomes so important. Is this accurate? Quality testing, but quality can only come from a human if they truly understand it. So yes, all this agent stuff is great. Having this human in the loop where they come off and they're starting to check the data before it goes on to the next task, or that kind of stuff, things. Or I agree to go off and spend £5,000 on my credit card. No, I don't. I don't want an agent going off and doing that automatically. I want to have that control of that. This is going to be native for them, and that's scary. And so the more we see from an education point of view in the school space, also from an ethical point of view for everybody else in the world, I think it's really important for us to be able to adopt that AI element. And then when they want to start doing that critical thinking, they have a true understanding of, okay, this subject that I'm currently working on, I understand this, I have the experience in this. And that's a really tricky thing at this moment in time.
Yeah. And then I can contrast that with a totally opposite story, which was I was sat in the hairdressers yesterday, and I live in the Derbyshire countryside, so there's lots of farmers around, and the hairdresser was talking to this bloke in the chair who's probably in his mid to late 50s, I'd say, and the hairdresser asked him, he said, "Have you ever heard of ChatGPT?" And he turned around and goes, "I'm a bloody farmer from Ashmore. What do you think?" He had literally no awareness of this whole technology revolution that's happening, literally the other side of his phone. But yeah, contrasting realities there, right?
Absolutely. I've got a farmer friend, and he's been asked to reduce his water intake by 25% because it's needed for data centers. And it's scary to think that that's affecting them in that way. He says, I have no idea what this AI thing is. And I gave him an analogy. And I don't know if anybody's seen this from Build last year. At the end of the keynote, there was something called Copilot Discovery, I think it was called, if I remember off the top of my head, where Microsoft brought in a customized language model that was trained on all sorts of cooling and information they had around cooling of data centers. And they brought in some of their own IP then. I'm sure every organization's got their own IP, got a large language model, and asked it to start comparing and starting finding similarities or new things it found between all this knowledge that it had inside this language model and this new research paper that they had. And they demonstrated how they found a new gel liquid that you could dunk servers into, allowing the servers not to have water, no fans, reducing power, reducing cooling requirements. This is where innovation will come. And the farmer is kind of quite surprised by that's the kind of thing you could do. And I say, well, that means where, yes, it won't affect necessarily what you do on the farmland, but it will necessarily affect maybe the fertilizer that you get. You may well get advances and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing that is probably often overlooked, isn't it? That as a user, whether that's a personal user of AI or in a work business setting, the point of use is so easy, right? I pick my phone up now, I just swipe up, and I've got ChatGPT, and I can put it in deep research mode. I can get it to run a deep research project for 15 minutes whilst it's doing stuff. But in the real world, the physical world, that is somewhere physical in a data center running a task that requires power, requires energy, requires cooling. And do you think there comes a point in time where the the physical limits of infrastructure data center technology will hold back the innovation in the digital AI world, and we might get to a point where digital AI is waiting for physical data center infrastructure technology to catch up to let it take the next innovation leap.
Potentially, but it's also a bit of a sensitive subject at this moment in time. And the main reason is because you've got a bit of a RAM issue coming through, and not enough RAM around for everybody else to have it. Microsoft, AWS, and Google are taking some of the most advanced chips that are available, and they've already got orders for the next 3 to 5 years from some of the commentary that I've seen online. That's like, wow. So how are the enterprise organizations who want to build their own language models going to be able to do that if they can't get hold of the kits? Or they're going to have to use one of those hyperscalers. So it's really difficult to be able to turn around and start to predict some of those elements of where AI will be. You've got ARM machines from Microsoft now. You've got the bio chip inside of Apple that can run small language models on your local machine. That potentially could do coding in the future. Could Windows 12 be the first AI operating system where you get whatever you want on there in single basis, but then you can use the AI model to start saying, I need an application to do this, I need an application to do this. You might pull it from the marketplace, but it might go off and build it for you. It's really interesting to see if these things can run on the endpoint. Brilliant. They're going to run inside the hyperscalers. But if you wanted to build a new RAM data center now, a new factory to build RAM, it's not going to be operational 2030. We've got some real issues kind of the hardware holding us back in general, not alone with the advances that we're seeing of what can happen with these large language models. It may well be that those big hyperscalers start to actually have a bit bigger monopoly because they've got the most amount of hardware while you'll be able to run it locally.
Yeah. And you'd think that they will continue to have the buying power in that space, right, over individual enterprises wanting to do it for one-off projects or solutions that they want to build for themselves. The hyperscalers are just going to continue having this demand, aren't they? You would think.
Absolutely. And I think they're already, I think this commentary said there's a new RAM factory being built in Arizona that comes online later on this year. And Microsoft have already bought it all out for 3 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty impressive.
And I mentioned just as we were coming onto the call, we're going to try something a little bit different. So because it sort of feeds into this sort of innovation curve gap, and it's a conversation from Joe Rogan's podcast, the second best podcast in the world after Microsoft Mentors, and it's Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck's talking about the context is they're talking around how AI is potentially going to impact jobs and roles within the film industry. But he has an interesting take and lens on the sort of spending and potential innovation gap with AI.
In my view, to what history seems to show, which is adoption is slow, it's incremental. I think a lot of that rhetoric comes from people who are trying to justify valuations around companies where they go, we're going to change everything. The reason they're saying that is because they need to ascribe a valuation for investment that can warrant the CapEx spend they're going to make on these data centers, with the argument that, like, oh, you know, as soon as we do the next model, it's going to scale up and be 3 times as good. Except that actually ChatGPT-5, about 25% better than ChatGPT-4, and costs about 4 times as much in the way of electricity and data. So those, they say that's like plateauing. The early AI, the line went up very steeply, and it's now sort of leveling off. I think it's because, and yes, it'll get better, but it's going to be really expensive to get better. And a lot of people were like, fuck this, we want ChatGPT-4, because it turned out like the vast majority of people who use AI are using it to like, as like companion bots to chat with at night. And so there's no work, there's no productivity, there's no value to it. I want to.
So that's a really interesting video, and I think there's more context that needs to be added. It's great that he's got that level of insight and seeing that's quite going on, and this is where he's looking at it from a ChatGPT from 4 to 5 as an example. Nobody's talking about ChatGPT 6 yet. which is going to be another 10x on the number of servers and knowledge. And he's dead right. Cooling, and the important word he didn't say there was sustainability, right? We're eating more into the earth the more that we're going off and doing this. The refinement in these models is what's becoming impressive. The real opportunity to be able to go off and change things. Again, I've looked a lot of commentary into this around this Opus 4.5. We've now got Opus 4.6. This AI model that can do extraordinarily good coding to the point that it can do coding, right? That's the scary thing. And even the person that wrote Claude Code that does all this for you used his own model to be able to go off and build Claude Code. It's a scary thing that it's actually reinventing itself and building its own tools. 4.6 has now come along, and it's the bigger context window. It's got multiple agent support. The fact that it's now not just going, okay, this is my task list, I'm going to go off and do it. No, it's an agent and an agent and an agent that are all going to talk to each other to be able to go off and complete the task, which means that a 9-month project that would normally take a team of people can be done in 7 hours from some of the commentary I was listening to last night. That's incredibly powerful. Is that returning on the investment that they're sending on the data centers, on the cooling, the power, the people that want to go off and buy these models to be able to go off and do it with the frontier model from OpenAI, the Codex, all that kind of things? Yes, that is bringing true transformation. That is going to drive a lot of change. And another example of that is that when the one single prompt, an MD file, a markdown file that was shown around knowledge workers and how it can bring certain knowledge into a context window of 1 million, which was done by OpenAI and Anthropics, almost 231 billion was taken off share prices from legal firms, because now they can bring the whole book of library information into the context window for the AI to go up and do it. You're not going to get that unless you are investing in the models and they're fine-tuning them to be able to deliver these things. And that's exactly where we are now. The AI has just taken off a huge chunk of share prices from so many organizations because of one prompt and the availability and the tooling that it has. That's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, like you say, the ability for AI to allow what, if you think of knowledge workers in the past, like you say, law firms, accountancies, those sort of skill areas, a big percentage of the time spent in those people in those roles is spent around the knowledge base and pulling that knowledge in to then have the context to execute. Whereas large language models, AI, is taking that chunk away and allowing the human element to do the critical thinking part, which is the most critical part of the process, but historically has only been 50% of the time that they could spend on it because they're having to do so much work in the grind side of things. So it's just allowing and opening up opportunities for that. So I think it's definitely got some interesting points. I think the wider conversation they were having of how it could potentially impact jobs, for in that example in the film industry. I think in the tech industry, it's the same sort of worries and fears that people have, right? Which is, if I'm graduating from uni, is anyone going to need a junior developer if they can do it in one of these models?
Yes, is the answer, by the way, from my point of view.
Yeah, and I think so as well. Like, with any technology innovation, there's always change in terms of how that then is defined in roles and jobs and responsibilities. But as businesses, as an economy, as a society, we always shift that around to then fit the new technology landscape, is what I've always seen anyway.
Absolutely. And let's go through we've already had this. And that was when cloud came along. IT Pro's dead now. There won't be an IT Pro. We don't need it. We don't want cloud servers going in the cloud. We need to be able to plug in our servers. We need to be able to control them and all that kind of side of things. It's really complex now, right? Trying to build out an Azure environment with all these different kind of technologies, that's complex. We've had to upgrade our skills. We've had to evolve. We've had to do so much more. AI is doing the same thing. Copilot's got complicated, but for the good.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, that's a really good, interesting tour of the current state of play in the Microsoft AI and Copilot space for us, Alex, and sort of some of the broader conversations around AI, which is always really interesting. as you may remember, I always like to finish Microsoft Mentors with a Microsoft Mentors quickfire round.
I had
You ready
forgotten
to? Don't worry. Quick sort of back and forth. Yes or no for some of them. Bit more of an expansive answer for some of them potentially. I'm going to take Copilot out of the game for you. He's on the bench. He's not allowed to play. Out of the other large language models, which one do you personally see the most use cases for in your own day-to-day work life?
I'm an engineer by heart. I can build things. I understand that what we're going to do from a GDPR, compliance, audit logs, all that kind of side of things, database relationships. I've got a 6,500 word prompt that describes all that builds out solutions in Claude Code. Claude Code is the thing for me, using that Opus 4.6 to be able to build agents, to be able to build new SaaS solutions within hours. That's my favourite thing to do at this moment in time.
Yeah, sounds like fun. I think we covered this a little bit, but Copilot, what is it? Is it a platform or a product, or both?
Clearly both when you break it down into those four areas of AI in Office, native AI applications, extensibility in data, and agentic AI.
Yeah. In 2026, what's more important in the AI world, prompt engineering or agent orchestration?
I think they're the same thing.
Yeah.
Because you've got to put the prompt in to get the agent that you want it to be. I still remind organizations you've got to have the right prompts, the right inputs to have the context of the agent to go and do what you want, or just to ask it to summarize the emails in the way that you want.
Yeah. If you had a crystal ball, if we look back, if we were 12 months down the line and looking back in retrospect, what do you think are the most impactful releases that have come out that we're going to look down the line and go, Jesus, we didn't know actually what we had our hands on there, and this is unbelievable?
I'm quite intrigued to see that Copilot Studio has now got this ability to be able to write the code for it using Visual Studio Code, which means I potentially can use an AI agent to be able to go up and build multiple agents inside of Visual Studio Code, and then publish them into Copilot Studio. That could be really revolutionary for organizations. I just create my demand file, what it is that I want it to do. It goes and re-engineers it for me, goes and builds it for me, rather than me having to sit in Copilot Studio and write all the, add this context, add this workflow, this process. It can do it all for you. So I think the agentic side of things will grow massively because there is so much going on in that space. Microsoft are always going to be behind because they're doing compliance. That's really important to remember. They might have these frontier firms and Opus, the Opus models, or the Claude models, or the ChatGPT models, but Microsoft will always bring these and go, there you go, now you can use it in the GDPR data center, you can do it in the way that you want.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you were going to pick one skill within the Copilot arena that, if someone's not working with Copilot now, but they know that's the direction their career is going to go, where would you start?
Do you know what I'm tending to say? Quality assurance. Making sure we haven't touched on, and maybe it's an opportunity to come back another time. Observability of AI models and your agents. What are they doing? Are they delivering the same outputs? Have you got machine learning on them? That's something that we're going to have moving forwards. Is the AI model? You built your own AI model. It's hosted in Azure or Gemini, Google platform, wherever it is. It's bringing in. It's giving you an output. How do you make sure that output is still doing the same as what it was doing 6 months ago? If it's got machine learning in it, is it still doing something? Has it started hallucinating? Quality assurance and observability with agentic is going to be so important. If you want to start a startup today, build that.
Sounds good. Alex, thanks very much for your time. Just as a closing note, just tell people where to find you, bits that you put out, blogs, articles, newsletters. Just give people a quick rundown.
Yeah, LinkedIn's the best place for me. That's where I kind of aggregate all my content together. I've got an MCP service that I run every single Monday morning to tell you the latest Microsoft 365 updates. I've got a prompt to pull the information from MCPs. I post it on LinkedIn. But then I've got a newsletter. I'm trying to do every week, but sometimes it's taking me too long to bring all that information together, doing the research, some of that art the possibility. So the newsletter on there. If I do a YouTube video, which I'm not doing too many of, again, I post them on LinkedIn. So yeah, please do look me up on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Thanks very much for your time, Alex. And yeah, maybe we'll catch up in another 18 months, 24 months time, and it won't be us, it'll just be robots, because everyone will all be taken over by AI.
The Alex agent to come and do it. Absolutely, let's do that.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks very much for your time, mate. Have a good day.
Cheers. Bye.
Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Whether you listen to us on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcast, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. Both myself, Ollie Ridley, on LinkedIn, our guests, and also the podcast. The more people that we know are listening, the more time and investment we can make into the podcast and bring more conversations with our Microsoft mentors and leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem to our community. In the meantime, stay tuned and keep an eye out for next week's episode.